The crowd roared for Rome's legions, but no one cheered for what came before. Before the battlefield, before the glory, before iron met iron under a blood-red sky, there was a boy, 17 years old, standing at a gate, about to discover that Rome didn't want his dreams. She wanted everything else. Picture it. You've watched them march through your town your entire life. The armor catching the afternoon sun like scattered fire. The mechanical, rhythmic thunder of hobnailed boots on stone. Precise, relentless, inhuman. You've heard the stories. The pay, the land, the pride. So you showed up. And the moment you walked through that gate, the dream began to die. Because Rome wasn't building soldiers. Rome was building machines, human machines. And the process of deciding whether you were worth the metal, it started the second they laid eyes on you. The Roman military didn't stumble into greatness. It was engineered, century by century, campaign by campaign, failure by failure, into the most brutally efficient killing system the ancient world had ever produced. And at the heart of that system was a truth that Rome understood before any modern military theorist ever wrote it down. The body breaks before the enemy ever arrives. The military writer Vegetius documented their recruitment standards with cold, surgical precision. Lively eyes, broad chest, strong arms, narrow waist, legs built for punishment. But here's what history rarely tells you. Rome wasn't just looking for strong men. She was looking for men who were already half broken in. Smiths, wagon makers, butchers, hunters. Men whose hands already knew suffering. Weavers, fishermen, pastry cooks, turned away at the gate. If you're finding this story gripping, go ahead and subscribe to Legacy of Rome. We go deeper into the brutal truth of Roman life every single week. Now back to the grind. Imagine you passed. The doctor prodded every joint, every limb, searching for anything that might make you a liability when Rome needed you most. You passed him too. And now, you entered the probatio, the trial. 4 months. No rank, no honor, not yet a soldier. Just raw material waiting to be tested or discarded. They separated you from the real legionaries. You ate apart, slept apart. You were not one of them. You were something to be evaluated. Week 1. No weapons, no combat. Just marching. And before you feel relieved, understand what Roman marching actually was. 20 Roman miles. Roughly 18 to 20 modern miles. 5 hours. Every single day. In full kit. Feel that weight for a moment. Iron armor pressing down on your shoulders. The scutum, that massive wooden and leather shield. 15 to 20 pounds alone, strapped to your arm. A helmet, 2 javelins, a short sword, and the furca, the T-shaped pole on your left shoulder rattling with 5 days of food rations, cooking gear, entrenching tools, a pickaxe, wooden stakes, a wicker basket. 60 to 100 pounds. Total. Now march. In sandals. In summer heat. On dirt roads. Don't straggle. Don't fall out. Don't break the line. Because Vegetius was explicit. A man who falls out of step forces every soldier behind him to slow. The formation bunches. The spacing breaks. And on a battlefield, a formation that's fallen apart is a formation waiting to be slaughtered. The march wasn't conditioning. The march was the first question Rome asked you. Can you suffer in silence for the man next to you? And when the march ended, you didn't rest. You built a city, every night, without exception, whether you stopped for 1 night or 100. A fortified camp had to rise from bare earth before any man closed his eyes. You dropped your pack. You pulled out your pickaxe, and you dug a perimeter ditch, 12 feet wide, 9 feet deep, by hand. The earth piled into a rampart. The wooden stakes you'd carried on your back driven into the top to form a palisade wall. 5 hours, start to finish. Centurions measured every section with rods, 10 feet per man. If your ditch was shallow, if your stakes were crooked, the vine staff found your back. That was your day. March 20 miles. Build a fortified city. Sleep, wake before sunrise. Do it again. If this is making you feel the weight of every Roman mile, drop a comment below. Tell us, could you have survived week 1? And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the moment. When weapons training finally arrived, you thought the suffering would change shape. It did. It got worse. The training sword, the wooden gladius, was twice the weight of real iron. The wicker practice shield, twice the weight of the combat shield. The Romans had calculated it perfectly. Break you with the brutal version, and the real weapons feel like mercy. Your first opponent wasn't a man. It was a wooden post, driven into the earth, the height of a human being. You attacked it, not from a distance, up close. The way Roman combat actually worked: shield in, sword out, short, controlled thrusts into the midsection. Not slashing, not hacking, thrusting. The Romans had studied death with the same clinical precision they applied to architecture and law. They knew the answer. A slash opens a wound but leaves you exposed. A thrust to the gut or throat, delivered from behind the cover of your shield, that ended men. So you stabbed that post, hundreds of times, thousands of times, until your shoulder was a sustained, silent scream, until the centurion blew the whistle and told you to begin again. On top of the marching, the digging, the drilling, the drilling's work, came formation training. Because every individual skill meant nothing if you couldn't execute it as part of something larger than yourself. The test judo. Shields locked overhead like a shell of iron against a storm of arrows. The triplex aces. 3 battle lines splitting apart, merging, wheeling left, wheeling right. All while maintaining perfect spacing, perfect tempo. You drilled these movements until your body knew the commands before your brain had processed the horn signal. And if you broke formation, if you stepped left when every man stepped right and opened a gap in the line, the vine staff. Every centurion carried one, cut from a grapevine. Thick, heavy, and it was used on soldiers the way a trainer uses a whip on animals that have failed to respond. Immediately, without ceremony, without bureaucracy. Because in battle, your mistake didn't just cost you. It killed the man beside you. We're halfway through one of the most brutal training systems in human history. If this content hits different for you, subscribe to Legacy of Rome and leave a comment. What part of this training do you think would break you first? Let us know below. Here is what Rome understood. What she had always understood, that no philosopher wrote more plainly than her centurions demonstrated every single morning. Raw courage is almost worthless. A man can be brave when he is fresh, when his legs don't burn, when his stomach is full, when the horror is still theoretical. But after 4 hours of marching, after an hour of digging, after a morning of weapons drill that had already hollowed him out, was he still there? Was he still willing? That was the real test. Not speed, not strength, not even skill. Willingness. The thing that lives in a man. Or doesn't. Rome could teach the march pace. She could teach the thrust. She could teach the formation. She could not teach a man to endure. That either lived inside you, or it didn't. And every day the rations reminded you of exactly where you stood. Instructors who excelled received double portions as formal military reward. Men who failed the standard, who marched wrong, thrust wrong, held the line wrong, received less food. Think about that. You've just marched 20 miles with 100 pounds on your back. You've dug a ditch in the dark. You've drilled with a sword heavier than iron, and now the centurion looks at your form and tells you tonight you eat less food, more work tomorrow. Get better or get hungry. Many showed up at 17 full of fire and story. Most found out in the first week of marching what they were actually made of. And Rome, cold, patient, indifferent Rome, had already known the answer. She just needed you to discover it for yourself. Those who couldn't make the pace were dismissed, replaced. The Legion had no sentiment for men who almost made it. Vegetius wrote it plainly. Many men who looked promising on first inspection were found completely unfit once training began. Those men were rejected and replaced by better men. For it is not numbers, but bravery that carries the day. 4 months. That was the trial. And if you survived it, if you'd held the line in the rain and the dark and the heat before sunrise, day after day, they gave you the mark. Tattooed, branded, permanent. You belong to Rome. If you've made it this far, you already have more endurance than most Roman recruits who quit in week 1. Subscribe to Legacy of Rome so you never miss a story like this. And drop a comment. What would your Roman name have been? We look at the Roman legions today and we see the glory, the triumphs, the conquests, the marble monuments. We rarely look at the gate where the dream died, where a 17-year-old boy picked up a wooden sword twice the weight of iron and found out who he was. Modern militaries still echo Rome. The sleep deprivation, the weighted marches, the deliberate, calculated suffering designed not to break men, but to reveal them. Because Rome knew something we are still learning. The greatest battles are never fought on the field. They are fought in the 4th hour of a march when everything inside you says stop, and you take one more step anyway. What does discipline mean when even exhaustion becomes a teacher? What does courage mean, not in the flash of battle, but in the long, grey grind before it? Rome didn't ask those questions out loud. She just handed you a wooden sword heavier than iron, pointed at a stake, and watched what you did with it. Before the battlefield, before the glory, before the eternal name carved into stone, there was a boy at a gate, a pickaxe, a post, a march that never seemed to end, and Rome, watching, always watching. If this story moved you, if you felt even a fraction of the weight those recruits carried, hit that like button, subscribe to Legacy of Rome, and leave a comment below with one word. What does this story make you feel? Every video, we go deeper, not into the myth, into the mud, into the real lives of the men who bled to build the greatest military machine the ancient world ever produced. Subscribe, and as always, may history never be forgotten.